I'm Bob Mader with Contractor Magazine, and we're here in Atlanta at the American Council for an Energy Efficient Economy Hot Water Forum. We're talking to independent consultant and hot water guru Gary Klein, who not only goes to code hearings, he actually submits suggested changes to the code, which makes him a much smarter guy than I am. So, Gary, you went to the recent ICC Code hearings, right?
That's correct, yes. These are what used to be called final action hearings. I think they're called public comment hearings now.
Okay, now what parts of the I codes were you involved in?
This cycle, I was interested in hot water in three parts of the code. International Residential Code Plumbing, IECC, the Energy Conservation Code in residential and in commercial.
Okay, now the changes that went through, I think one of them involved insulation. Could you just talk to us about that?
Sure. In fact, this cycle, there were 60 code change proposals related to hot water in those three codes, out of a total of a little over 600 code changes in all of them. So 10% roughly were related to hot water, which I think is appropriate given the importance of hot water as we build more efficient buildings. Water heating grows as a percent, and so there should be changes to the code. So pipe insulation. We had proposed for residential that all hot water pipe be insulated, the same for commercial. And what we ended up with was that all hot water piping 3/4 inch and greater shall be insulated. And there's additional caveats in residential that it should be also that if it's in a bad environment. So, for example, pipes running under a slab or outside or between buildings, any diameter needs to be insulated. And what we said is it should be 1/2 inch wall thickness or R3, depending on whether it's tube insulation or buried in the wall insulation, for example.
Now, there were also changes to controls for circulation of hot water?
That's correct. The circulation controls that are now in both residential and commercial energy code are that you have to have controls that are demand activated, meaning in this case aligned with the patterns of use in the occupancy. So you can't run 24/7 recirc. You can't have gravity loops, which are 24/7 without pumps. You have to match your control strategies to the uses of hot water in the occupancy.
Okay, and there were also provisions for timely delivery of hot water to each fixture?
There were. In commercial, we were able to get that for starting in 2015. Let me back up. The current International Plumbing Code, which matches what buildings that are covered by the Commercial Energy Code, right, says that you can't have more than 50 feet between the source of hot water and any hot water use. And the Commercial Plumbing Code says, IPC says that you can't, 50 feet is from either a water heater or from a recirc loop or from a heat trace trunk line. So what we did is we built on that for the code change proposal and said 50 feet is nice, but what you really need to do is to limit the volume so you have timely delivery within 30 seconds. That's what we picked. And it means that you can't have more than 64 ounces or 50 feet, whichever is less.
Okay, as a frame of reference, how much is 64 ounces in terms of the pipe diameter or diameter versus the length of the pipe?
Sure. So in 3/4 inch tubing, a 1/2 gallon, which is 64 ounces, is between 20 and 25 feet, depending on whether it's copper or plastic. In 1/2 inch tubing, you double it to roughly 40 or 50 feet.
Okay. Drain water heat recovery is also part of the code.
That's correct. There are now provisions in the code, both residential and commercial, that say if you're going to install drain water heat recovery, you have to follow certain standards, both for health and safety and for efficiency measurement, so that code officials and builders and plumbers will all have the same reference standards to work from.
Okay, were there other important hot water provisions that became part of the code?
These were the biggest. Far and away, these are the biggest. Pipe volume trumps almost anything. If you can cut the volume in half, you cut the energy time and water waste in half. It's fairly simple. We did get a provision in commercial for drain water heat recovery that gives credit to the performance path for the use of it. So those are good.
In which edition of the I codes will these changes appear in?
2015.
2015. Okay, well, thank you very much, Gary. I appreciate you telling me about the I-Codes.
Thanks,
Bob Mader with Contractor Magazine, Gary Klein, Affiliated International Management.